Gentlemen, welcome!
Those Riders of the Dawn.
This is Stu.
This is Jay.
And we're going to continue talking about Lord of the Rings adaptations, the movie adaptations. Today we're going to do Two Towers.
Yeah.
And if we don't have enough to say about it, we'll do Return of the King as well.
Right on to it.
All right. So Two Towers is the second movie and the second book that was published. We mentioned in the first video that Tolkien originally didn't want to volumize Lord of the Rings, but he did so because it made more sense for the publisher to do so. And that, in turn, has influenced how the movies have been developed.
We had to talk before the camera turned on because I remembered almost nothing from the second movie. So we had to go through a little refresher of what actually happens in the second movie.
Especially compared to what was different in the book.
Yeah. So it was like... So something didn't happen as well with the first movie, because the first movie I remember pretty vividly.
Well, I think with the second movie, there's a definite focus shift from adventure to war.
Yeah.
And that focus shift kind of holds into the third movie. So after the breaking of the Fellowship, Frodo and Sam go off on their own, and they still have adventures. And in the book, it's still quite adventure heavy. They're traveling and they're seeing fantastic things.
Right.
Everybody else, though, goes to Rohan, which is a giant plain. You know, it's rolling plains and horsemen, and then they just basically engage in a war there.
Yeah.
And two of the hobbits, their adventures continue with Treebeard, but there's not that much to Treebeard. It's a lot of stuff about the Ents deciding to go to war finally, and they're very, very crucial in the overthrow of Saruman. However, it's not like you're traveling through, if you think about Fellowship, it's like you're going through the Old Forest, through the Barrow Downs, to Bree, to Weathertop, to Rivendell, down through the mountains, getting attacked by wolves. In the book, there's a wolf attack. Trying to climb a mountain, it's too snowy. Go through the mines of Moria, get attacked by a giant ancient demon from before, from prehistory.
Before time.
The Paragon dies. You go to Lothlorien. You go to a crazy high elven forest city. You go down a river and then finally get attacked by orcs, and there's so much adventure in Fellowship of the Ring. Two Towers, the adventures pretty much just Frodo and Sam having adventures in pretty dark places, and then otherwise you're doing war. So because of that focus shift, I could see how it seems, you could not remember, there's a lot of details that are required to initiate and execute a war in a story, but those aren't going to be as memorable as seeing whoa, that tree city looks cool.
Yeah, that's true. The visuals are more stagnant. That doesn't mean they're not good.
Yeah, they're great.
Fantastic visuals.
Yeah, they're great in Two Towers.
I remember you watch Merry and Pippin on the shoulders of Treebeard as you're walking up towards Saruman's tower, and you see just the desolation around it. As he describes how they're killing his people, and then they go back to the council, whatever this Ent council is. And I don't remember exactly how it happens in the movie, but I remember in the book it's just painstakingly slow, and you see Merry and Pippin just almost cringing about how impatient they are because they just want to get on with it. They're like, don't you know that evil is afoot? Let's go destroy it. In the movie, they had to do it much faster.
Yeah, but they did a good job communicating that. It's so, are you going to do it? And then it's Treebeard leans out and goes, we just finished saying hello. Yeah. And fun fact, Jonathan Rhys Davies, who played Gimli, also did the voice of Treebeard.
Oh,
so he did Treebeard and Gimli. All the orcs were voiced by one guy, who was Ian Samachis, the guy who did Gollum's voice. So he did. So you have some of these actors doing multiple voices in these movies, and I'm trying to remember how they got Jonathan Rhys Davies to do Treebeard. It's they did it as a stand-in. They're like, can you just do this real quick so we can hear what it sounds like? And they're like, well, let's just keep it. I think he sounds great as it. And so a lot of people didn't make that connection because he was able to make Treebeard so different from Gimli.
Yeah.
So yeah, overall, I think the movie's pretty effective. There's a big problem I had with the adaptation, and that's that they didn't have the actual ending from the book, which was a much more Empire Strikes Back ending than what you get in the movie for Frodo and Sam.
Right, because at the end of Two Towers, you have them traveling through the spider's lair, and Gollum is leading them through, and you can hear him whisper about, they'll never know, and you can tell that he's leading them into a trap. But they move that into the third movie
for, I guess, to start the third movie with action.
Yeah,
would be my best guess. However,
let's see it.
Tolkien, when he volumized them, each book ends on a defeat. So, and I think the format of the books is interesting to talk about, because in Fellowship of the Ring, it's continuous, and it ends with Boromir being killed and the Fellowship being broken, and Frodo and Sam leaving the Nirvana. So it ends with a major defeat, and then Merry and Pippin are kidnapped by the orcs. The second book is divided into two books, and each volume is divided into two books: book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4. So book 3, the first half of Two Towers is exclusively focused on Aragorn, Gimli, Legolas, Merry, Pippin, and the return of Gandalf.
Yeah.
So it's exclusively focused on the battle with Isengard, or the war with Isengard. And because of that, you get to the end of the midway point of the book, and it ends with a great victory, which is they defeat Saruman's army, and then the Ents defeat Saruman himself. Pippin looks into Palantir, and it sets up some tension for the next book. But it ends on more or less ends on a big victory. Then you have book 4, which is entirely focused on Frodo and Sam, and that ends with a major defeat, making you really want to read the next book. And there was actually quite a big gap between the publication of Two Towers and the publication of Return of the King. And there were fans of the books. There were people who would graffiti "Frodo lives" in the New York subway. This is an actual thing that happened.
Wow.
Hobbits were big in the 60s.
So I didn't know that.
Yeah, so like that ending where the spider, you think he's killed Frodo, it ends on, and Sam takes the ring to continue the quest. That's a major defeat. And then Sam only realizes at the end that Frodo is probably still alive, but now he's taken by the enemy, and what is he going to do?
Yeah.
So that's a more like Empire Strikes Back kind of ending. And it should be the other way around. Like Empire Strikes Back ends in the way that Two Towers does, with the defeat and
right,
and the wondering of how you're going to continue on.
So one thing that I remember liking a lot about the movie was the Battle of Helm's Deep.
Yeah,
right?
Helm's Deep.
And they're fighting in this last keep, which is all that's holding the armies of Saruman and Mordor from just marching on Gondor. And basically it's one of those things like, it's always darkest before the dawn. This is something that they say all throughout it. And you see them getting pushed back, and their army keeps taking defeats, but they're holding strong. And what's great in the movie is the conversations happening between Legolas and Gimli, I thought were really great at easing some of the tension, because you see them having fun. They're in their natural
there's a lot of
state.
comic relief between those two characters, and I think in the movies definitely it works pretty well. Like, some people may not like that Gimli's just a comic relief character. It's like I think it works pretty well in the movies, and you need somebody who's kind of serious but also jovial. Like, he mixes those two pretty well.
Yeah, he's not just a comic relief.
Yeah, to provide a foil to Legolas.
But you see them with this relationship, and it makes sense. It works really well for the onstage chemistry to keep you from just drowning in darkness there at the end. And then finally, when the army comes from behind with the morning dawn.
Like, it crushes the last of the orcs.
Yeah, it's just really effective.
And in the special edition, they do add something that's in the book, which is send the forest itself to go like defeat the orc army. And so the orcs flee into this forest that has all of a sudden shown up in front of Helm's Deep, this like last bastion, and it kills all the orcs that run into it. Then the forest disappears the next day. And so, like, in the book, it's effective. They're like, they hear things moving out in the darkness, and they're like, are the orcs on the move? And Gandalf's like, something is happening that hasn't happened in an age. He just kind of, he doesn't tell them what's happening, but Gandalf is kind of realizes what's happening and guides him in that sense. So I thought the movie was really, really effective in basically taking you all the way to the brink. The orcs are at the door, and Theoden, the king, he's in total despair, and there's this great scene. He's putting on his armor, and he's basically reciting his poem from the book about where is the horn that is blowing, all this stuff. It's really, really good. Great use of the poems from the book, bringing him in and giving him a dramatic presence. The actor who portrayed Theoden they have really good actors in the movies for the most part, especially for like any of the older characters. they really cast them well. Elijah Wood works as Frodo. I guess I can't say anything bad about it.
Yeah, I didn't not like him.
I did not like him. He wasn't like my vision of Frodo, but that doesn't really, I care about what's effective. When we get to The Hobbit, I could talk about why I really hated that performance. But for the most part, it was all really well cast. So he's like telling this poem. They put on his armor, and then he's like, ride with me to the end. And then Gimli blows the horn, and they like ride out to die. And in that last gasp, they meet. The sun rises, and the Éomer's army returns to save them, and it's like a really, really good movie moment. And I get why Peter Jackson ended the movie on that. He really ended it on that high note. And then instead of having the spider, killing Frodo, essentially, they have Faramir, who's Boromir's brother, decide to let them go, and that's the release of their tension. So Peter Jackson decided that the second movie ought to end on a big tension release rather than a big defeat again.
And I can understand why, because the tension is still there, because the quest isn't done. It's really just begun at that point. That's the point where you see, you know what, they might make it. They might get to the end. Whether they win or not is not clear yet, but we know that maybe we'll at least get to see Gondor, basically, because up until that point, it's just crushing. The first whole movie is just crushing defeat after one crushing defeat after another.
Yeah, they're on the run for the entire first movie.
Yeah,
or in the entire first book, they're running away. They're running away from the Nazgul. They're running away from this. They're running away. And in the second movie, they finally, most of the characters finally turn and fight. Frodo and Sam are still running away.
Frodo and Sam are still, yeah. And because honestly, Frodo and Sam run until the end of the book.
Yeah, they never make a stand.
Yeah.
Because it's not their quest. Their quest is their
quest is subtlety and
get to the end
and stealth. And even in the end, I love, and I don't want to talk really about Return of the King quite yet, but I love how Peter Jackson uses Gollum as a antagonist to Frodo and Sam, because and Tolkien did this in the book, so I felt like it was really very true representation. Was this character who he's friendly, but he's not really friendly, and he stabs him in the back a whole bunch of times, but they still need him. And so Sam the whole time is very much watching Gollum.
Creates a huge tension between Sam and Frodo, because Sam never trusts him.
Yeah, whereas Frodo's like, it seems towards the end he starts to understand Gollum finally, because the ring is starting to take hold of him. And so you see this
Frodo has too
Yeah.
much sympathy, and Sam is the caution. And
Yeah.
it's kind of like when you're cautioning someone and they're not listening to you. It's
Yeah.
like this frustration, and it's a good effective frustration.
Yeah.
And we kind of have that, and that begins in the second movie. We get this actual taming of Gollum. They did a good job setting Gollum up in the first movie that he's following them. They did that in the book as well. So that I felt that transmission to the screen was very effective and necessary for the final resolution of the plot.
And Gollum is just, everyone loves Gollum. Even though you hate him, you love him because he's a tragic character that you can understand. Like, you understand how he got to where he was, and
Gollum also has some comic relief as well in different ways, where he's like, there's a part in the movie, and so Peter Jackson was good at bringing comic relief into this dark story. You know, where they put the elven rope around his neck and he's just like screaming, and like his expressions are so funny when he's like upset about things. Yeah. There's a part where he's having a conversation with himself, like looking into the pool, and he's like, I'm not listening.
Yeah. Well, and what was great about the cinematic effects for that was his expressions. His expressions were so great, and you get like you can go from one moment of being like, oh, he's such a cute little horrible monster, to being like, oh, he's a terrifying horrible monster.
Yeah, he's a horrible thing. They should have killed him.
Yeah,
they should have killed him when they had the chance. It's a pity Frodo didn't kill him when he had the chance.
Well, and again, we're not. I do want to talk about the very end of Return of the King, the book, because
well, maybe we'll say that for the last video, because there's a lot to say about that. Here's some other things that I think made it into the movie that were good and possibly more effective in the movie. And one of them was this Eowyn falling in love with Aragorn thing. So Eowyn is the woman from Rohan, sister of Eomer, niece of the king, and she basically falls in love with Aragorn because who wouldn't, right? I mean, no homo, but Aragorn's badass. And so Aragorn, we also get a great revelation that isn't in the book, but is if you dig deep enough. It's just not in the main narrative, which is that Aragorn's actually over 80 years old. That he's old as hell. Because it's a point where it's like, oh, you know, I fought with your grandfather in this war, and she's like, how old are you? And he's like 87. Well, she falls in love with him, and he's basically like, you know, you love the idea of me. You don't really know me, so you can't really love me. And he also, as he does that, he remembers Arwen, you know, the elf that he actually does love and loves him.
Who we had this extra exposition from the first movie to set that up.
Yeah, and the extra exposition in the first movie, there's also this thing where it's like, you know, Arwen and Aragorn are not going to be able to be together, and then you have this sort of change. I don't remember which movie it happens in, where she has this dream of the future where she has a son, and she gets mad at her dad because he didn't reveal that to her. And I don't think it's kind of cringy, and it doesn't quite work, but it's effective in sort of setting up this last little bit of tension, adding a thread of tension that we can resolve at the end of the third movie. So they brought that little love triangle in, and it works because it in the third movie, it's part of what drives Eowyn to do what she does in the third movie. Right. So the second movie sets up a lot of stuff for the third movie,
which is still set up pretty well from the first movie.
Yeah, it's set up pretty well from the first movie and from the first book. Right. But in the books, like, Arwen's basically a footnote.
Yeah.
And we in order for that love story to be at all effective, they had to put stuff in the movie. So I totally am okay with that addition, because we have to give people a visual story of what's happening. We can't just kind of reference it and be like, yeah, he's in love with this elf, and then at the end he marries her. They're like, oh, I guess that's that elf you married. It wouldn't be effective unless it's like, yes, that's her, she's beautiful, whatever.
And suddenly they're vampires.
Yeah. And there's a great. I'm remembering some great scenes from all the movies, and some of the best dialogue is just pulled right out of the book. I mentioned where he's saying the poem. I mentioned the part where it's like where Gandalf is like many deserve death, many more deserve life. Will you give it to them? Do not be too quick to deal out. That whole speech. It's taken right out of the book, and it's effective. And in Two Towers, they have a lot of that as well. There's also this scene I remember where like Wormtongue, who is essentially the one who is kind of controlling the king in the movie. Now in the book, this isn't effectively stated, and in the movie they just made it like Saruman had a spell on him, and Gandalf breaks the spell.
Yeah.
Whereas in the book, it's just like Gandalf like reawakens him. It's not clear what.
Yeah,
Gandalf
like
does.
he's had clouds in his eyes, and he doesn't.
He just doesn't. He's just acting like an old man in the book.
Yeah.
So I think it's actually more effective in the movie what they do is they have Gandalf straight up break the spell.
Yeah.
And that gives you also a clue as to like Gandalf's power. We get to see him. He's returned from the dead, and he's different now, and he has more power over Saruman.
Yeah.
And it's like that's effective because later on in the third movie you see him. He tells Saruman, "Your staff is broken," and the staff shatters.
Yeah.
It's like it's a great moment. But there's this point where Wormtongue has been cast out, and he goes back to Saruman, and he looks out on this massive orc army that Saruman has created, and he cries because he realizes what he's done, and he realizes what that's for, and it's to destroy all the people. It's to destroy. He's like, it's built for one purpose: to destroy man.
Yeah.
To wipe the people out. That's why the army was built. And so like it's the movie was full of like these little subtle scenes, but they all add up together to have like a good emotional impact. And so you get a little bit of an insight into Wormtongue where you have a tiny bit of sympathy for him. Now they didn't fully carry through with it the way they did in the book, and I think the way that it happens in the book is just way more effective, but that's gonna have to wait, I think, till
next time.
Because there's a lot.
There's so much to say about Return of the King,
especially the ending.
Yeah.
Oh, the ending.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we got a little bit of time left, but I think we can end it there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can find me at MatthewJWellman.com.
You can find me at DavidBStewart.com and DVSPress.com if you want to read some of my fiction for free.
Yeah. And we'll see you guys next time.
All right. Have a good one.
Later.